Hello, everyone. Welcome to Moving Beyond the Family Engagement Checkbox, an innovative partnership to promote authentic family engagement and systems change. I am Elisa Ware. I'm a program manager at Family Voices, and I will get us started with welcomes today. Next slide, please. So just a little run through of what we're going to talk about. We're going to have our welcome, go over our agenda, do some introductions, and then we're going to get into background on the Pediatrics Supporting Parents, Common Threads, framework for assessing family engagement and systems change. We're going to hear from a panel of family leaders that worked on the PSP project, and we're going to talk about recommendations, and finally we'll hear from you with any questions and answers that questions that you may have for our panelists. Next slide, please. So in speaking about questions, we will have a Q&A session at the end of the webinar. Feel free to submit your questions throughout. You can click on the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen to open the Q&A window and just type your questions right in there and click send. We will then go ahead and get to those questions towards the end of the webinar today. Next slide, please. So as I stated, I'm Elisa Ware, and I am a program manager, that's the title, at Family Voices National. And I'm also going to be joined today by Stephanie Doyle, who's a senior associate at CSSP. And I'll be turning it over to Stephanie shortly, and she will formally introduce herself. But essentially, Stephanie and I will share with you about our partnership in the PSP project focused on fostering the social and emotional health of children, and on which the basis of our report that we're going to share with you today. Next slide, please. You will also hear from two amazing family leaders that I had a chance to work with throughout the PSP project, Joanna Ramirez and Tila Mims. They will share their insights and reflections on family engagement throughout the PSP project, in their experiences going on site visits and being a part of the Brain Trust, which we'll share all about those aspects of the project as we move forward. Next slide, please. We actually developed an issue brief, which we'll be talking about today and sharing more information. And it was really developed out of an innovative partnership between a national policy organization and a national family-led organization with a clear goal of engaging families at every level of the project in order to promote systems change for children and families. And this partnership really took both parties coming together to understand how do we each work, what strengths can we bring to the table, and really having a buy-in to engaging families at every aspect of the project. And so we will share more about that framework that we use, and how we partnered in order to move the project along. Next slide, please. So, and again, through this partnership, we were able to really learn how each other operated in order to really implement family engagement framework. And I'm going to share as we go through today, talking about what that framework was, but it really took the intentionality of both of us. And so we came together to write this issue brief to really be a model for and an example of how other organizations can really move family engagement to something that's much more authentic and really able to bring about the type of change that many projects are looking to have, that's centered on families and really moving beyond that checkbox that we know is a part of so many grants that you have. Next slide, please. We want to take a moment just to thank our funders for both their investment in and their commitment to not only the PSP project, but in specific to this particular webinar, to family engagement. They saw the need for it and provided the investment in it. And so we want to take a moment just to thank them for their commitment to family engagement. So with that, I'm going to turn it to Stephanie Doyle with CSSP, and she's going to share a little bit more about the PSP project.
Thank you, Elisa. My name is Stephanie Doyle. I'm a senior associate at the Center for the Study of Social Policy. We call ourselves a policy and action think tank based in Washington, D.C. And I work on our Young Children and Families team, which really has a focus on thinking about building anti-racist early childhood systems so that young children and their families can thrive. And a key part of that is really the pediatric medical home, where many families touch particularly during those first few years of life. Next slide. And so because of that interest, we had the opportunity in 2018 to partner with those funders that Elisa mentioned to conduct a study that looked at how the pediatric medical home, specifically that well child visit that we all go to, could really be used to support the parent-child relationship, really nurture that relationship, as well as the social emotional well-being of young children and their families. Really looking at the opportunity to focus on that social emotional health in addition to what is being done around the physical health of young children. Next slide, please. So what this project involved was really trying to get out into the field. We knew that there were many healthcare settings and innovative programs out there that were really trying to solve this problem and seize this opportunity, and we wanted to learn from them. This involved designing and going on 13 site visits, visiting places anywhere from Show Low, Arizona, a rural mountain town, all the way to Brooklyn, New York, and really getting out there and immersing ourselves in what those implementers were doing on a day-to-day basis with children and families. So we would be going into healthcare settings, really immersing ourselves there. And as many of us know, healthcare is a really specialized field. It has its own language and culture within that visit. So it really was an area that we needed to have an experience, get to know and experience that group. We knew that it would be critical for us to have parents at the table. You know, parents were essential. The project is called Pediatrics Supporting Parents, and parents are the critical piece, that central role there. And so they needed to be there to help us from the very beginning to understand what are those opportunities in the pediatric medical home. And, as I mentioned, CSSP is really focused on equity. And one of our main values is that the folks who are most impacted by something need to be at the table to help from the very beginning at that decision-making table. So with that, we really needed to think about how to design this project so that families could be involved from the very beginning. As we thought about that with our funders, we recognized that CSSP would need a partner to do this. As a national organization, we don't have direct contact and relationships with families, and we certainly do not have relationships with families across the country in any place. We also don't have, we really wanted to think about families that have that expertise and experience leading and advocating within healthcare because of that specialized knowledge. And this really led us to Family Voices because of their expertise, reach, and leadership experience to be able to work with us there. And what that allowed us to do was really bring parents in at every level of the project. Next slide. So what did that look like? It really started from the very beginning, where we partnered with Family Voices to build our own relationship together and think about, okay, what are we trying to achieve with this project, and what are all of the opportunities along the way where Family Voice will be incredibly important to be at the table. It sounds simple, but that first activity actually started with developing a job description, one that allow us to clarify the role for parents as well as clarify the role for us at CSSP. Really high level, because Elise is going to go into so much detail about this, but they helped us recruit families so that when we went to a mountain town in Arizona, there was a parent leader there with local knowledge to work with us. They trained and mentored family leaders to be prepared for all those calls, visits, and in-person meetings, helping us to facilitate an advisory group that could help us design those site visits and then analyze our findings from it. They helped us with the logistics in terms of providing stipends. And as I said, you know, as the project evolved over time, we're there to work with us to identify the opportunities and potential barriers to parents being authentic partners with the project. Next slide. And so the outcome, but I think what folks often ask, and I get asked many times, is how did this change what you would do? And it's always hard to know exactly, but I actually think as I reflect back, I can really point out the places where having families at the table made a huge difference. And I often tell people that if families hadn't been with us all along the way, we would have written an entirely different report, and one that would have missed critical opportunities for ways that parents, there were ways that the pediatric medical home can support families around social and emotional health. They helped us clearly define how anti-racism, anti-bias, and equity were central in interactions in the pediatric room, as well as at the systems level, and helped us really describe what that should look like. They helped us to identify on the site visit that local knowledge of the community, of what's going on there, as well as raise up particular issues and opportunities related to special populations. For example, one parent shared a little bit about how the program might work, or if she could imagine it would work for foster children. They helped us, we were prioritizing the common practices. So you see here, our final outcome was to identify these common practices that we learned from going on all these site visits. And we ended up coming up with 14 of them. I think that might be on the next slide. Yeah, 14 of them. And we were like, oh my goodness, 14, is there any way we can narrow these down and focus on the most important ones? But when we went to both pediatrician and parents, they, which is not surprising, identified different priorities. Pediatricians focused on things that really were within their scope of control in the pediatric well-being, but parents articulated priorities that made sense to how their lives work, which is mostly out in the community. And had we not had parents there, we would have missed the critical importance of community support, connecting to other families, and the relationship, really how important that relationship is. And then lastly, in the recommendations, the family leaders really helped us to not only to really talk about what that role of a family-led organization would be. And it was something that I know for a fact I would have missed. They talked about the role of parents and family-led organizations to create demand for this type of service, to educate, so they could be educated consumers and be able to say, well, when I'm looking for a doctor, these are the types of things that I want to see in a practice, or know about what's available, what are their benefits, so that they might advocate for those. And I have a 4-year-old and a 6-year-old, and I had during that particular advisory board meeting, had an absolute aha moment where I was like, I don't see myself as a consumer of healthcare. It wouldn't even occur to me to advocate for a particular benefit, because it's so confusing, and I'm in healthcare and I didn't think of myself that way. So it was quite the aha. And then lastly, as they're thinking about how do you take these common practices and spread them so they're more accessible across all communities in this country, articulating how families really need to be there to adapt it to that local context and the needs and opportunities and strengths of that community. So I have to just say that it has been just we are just so incredibly grateful for this partnership with Family Voices, one that really built our capacity at CSSP to do this work well, and thankful to the funders for providing such an investment so that we could have a meaningful partnership. And as I reflect back about, what was different about this experience, because in working in public health, I have many times, partnered with the community. And I think it really was an opportunity through partnership with a family-led organization that has that expertise and that reach, that we were able to meet the true potential of what we were hoping for. And almost as if I was able to make up for mistakes I had definitely made in many attempts earlier on in my career in public health. And just so grateful for what we have learned together. I'm going to pass this back to Elisa so that she can go into more detail about some of how we did it.
Thank you, Stephanie. So, everybody on the call has probably utilized processes and frameworks every day as we approach our work that's necessary to really improve the lives and outcomes of families that our work's based on. However, although we're often, many organizations are often well-intentioned, they don't necessarily take a systematic approach to engaging families in systems change. This can often leave family leaders really feeling like, and as the title, says, feeling like a checkbox, which we actually came up with from what we heard from the family leaders that participated on this project. Often family leaders are left unsure of their role or impact on the project. And so Family Voices had developed a framework for assessing family engagement and systems change. And it's something that we, through this project, were able to implement and put into action. So I'm going to walk through kind of what that framework looks like and then how it applied within the context of this project. Next slide, please. So the first key criteria or domain is commitment. So commitment essentially means that families are included in all levels of systems change initiatives that impact the organization's policies, programs, services, and practices. So what do you really need to do that? What does that commitment look like? So we need a champion within the organization. That's going to be key. Who within your organization says that family engagement is something we need to invest in, that is at the heart of this project, and can continue to kind of push the envelope to say, we have to do this and we need to get it right. And so we had that, and in CSSP, Stephanie always was right there, really being that champion for our work, and Selena as well, to say this is really important, and it's important that not only do we take the time, but we invest in it so that we can get this right and do it appropriately. It's important to also create opportunities. So when we talk about creating opportunities, we want to be sure that we're laying out a system that is going to be appropriate for families to come into and to be able to really lend their expertise and knowledge around the healthcare system and how it functions for them in a way that's accessible. We want to also provide support, and you'll see that some of these pieces kind of will overlap in some of the other domains. We want to provide support. So what does support mean? What does that look like? Support really means having a mentor or an experienced family leader who sat at these kind of tables, who has done this kind of systems level work to really be there to help support new voices, fresh voices, other, even voices that have been around before, so that they're able to bounce information off of each other, just as many people within the organization will be able to have that support. We also want to provide compensation. I say all the time, when we have compensation, we allow the opportunity for diverse and new and kind of current voices to be at the table. And that became really important in this project because we really wanted parents of young children who often don't have necessarily the experience or expertise of other, family leaders that we see that have older children. And so providing that support and that compensation allowed them to be able to sit at the table to really provide input to this project. And when we do all of that, we're really creating a win-win situation, right? It's going to be a good and appropriate situation for the project. It's going to be something that the family feels like they're giving and they're investing and they're contributing in a meaningful way. And so when everybody's committed, we can move the needle forward. Next slide, please. So the second part of this is transparency. And this is one that often can be really difficult for organizations to kind of put into practice. And so when we talk about transparency, we mean the family leaders can easily access and understand the information they need to participate effectively. So in order to do that, everybody needs a shared understanding of the work. And so as Stephanie said, this started with a job description, right? We needed to know, what do we expect of a family leader when they come to the table? And then they needed to know what were our expectations. And that allowed to ensure that we're getting what it is that we want. They know how to contribute in a meaningful way in order to be able to really have, an authentic engagement that's going to lead to the outcomes that we're looking for. The second piece is to provide training and support. So again, as I said, you're going to see kind of some overlap, because this is where, again, that mentorship comes in, those prep calls come in. They're able to, the family leaders that are participating are able to say, I don't really get this. I'm not sure about this. How am I going to run through this? And really able to understand what's going to happen before they actually get to the table where they're providing that input. The third piece is no jargon. So we all know we're full of alphabet soup. We got, there's acronyms all over the place. And we ask families to come and sit at the table, and we're throwing them all out because that's what we're used to, especially when you're working in policy and program change. And so really working to limit that in order for the conversation to be accessible to families. The fourth piece is convenient meeting times and formats. And so we always use doodle polls. We found a time that worked for the families. It wasn't a time that was at 12 o'clock or 10 o'clock in the morning. We wanted to figure out what was the time that worked best for them. And I think, one of the questions that I saw come through already was, what do you do in the midst of COVID? And I don't think that we would have done much different, because we actually held all of our calls virtually. We used Zoom before COVID existed and Zoom took off. And so we were able to bring families together from across the country at a convenient time that worked for everybody, in a format that worked for people to be able to log on in the location that was most appropriate for them so that they could contribute to the project. Next slide, please. So the fourth piece is the key is representation. So what do we mean by that? Family leaders essentially need to reflect the diversity of the community served by the organization, or that you're hoping to target with a particular project. And the key to that was, as Stephanie identified, is partnering with a family-led organization or community-based organization to recruit and support families. So coming to Family Voices, we then went out to our state affiliates and said, hey, we want people from these communities. We want to, these are the communities where we're looking to target, and we want you to go out and help us, because you know these communities best, and therefore they could go out and get family leaders that knew the community, had some experience sitting at tables and advocacy work, and then we were able to provide them support at the national level in order to be able to participate. The other piece that we were very intentional about was having family leaders that were representative of the population. So when we said that, we wanted a diverse group that was made up of different racial makeup, gender. We had a dad on the group. We had numerous moms on the group. We had different racial and ethnicities across the group. They lived in different geographic areas. We had family leaders that lived in the city. We had family leaders that lived in more rural areas, and literally from the East Coast to the West Coast. And we also looked at diversity in having family leaders and parents who had children that had special health care needs or disabilities, as well as families that did not. Next slide, please. And so the fourth piece is impact. And so family leaders, really ideas are incorporated at the systems level to improve policies, programs, services, and practices. So what does that mean? You're going to involve the family in every step of the process. In this particular project, they were involved in the design of site visits. They helped to develop the questions that were asked on the site visits, and really assisted all the way through to the analysis of the findings, and everything in between. At every point, we were stopping and saying, did we get this right? Did we ask these questions right? Does this work? And they got to see really this bi-directional communication of how is my feedback being actually utilized and implemented in the work that's being done. Next slide, please. So how did they show up in the particular PSP project? We had 3 different groups, and we brought in family leaders and involved them in all 3 aspects. So first we put together a brain trust of 5 family leaders from across the country who were diverse in race, ethnicity, gender, location, and the Brain Trust and Family Voices, we met once a month to really get input on, like I said, every aspect of the project. We also then had these 13 site visits that Stephanie mentioned, and we wanted family leaders that lived in the communities where these practices were. And because they know the community, this matters to them, it's important to them. And so we wanted to recruit family leaders that were able to be a part of that. We were able to have some of our Brain Trust members attend some of the site visits, and that was, a great opportunity. But we also had other family leaders that we recruited that were able to attend the site visits, and on those site visits were able to ask questions, interview staff and families, and do observations of their own of what matters to families when you're observing, which is very different from what CSSP might have observed or the providers that participated on the project might have observed. And they then offered the family leaders then offered their reflections of what was happening on the site visits, and that was incorporated into the findings that were analyzed. The final piece was CSSP and the whole PSP team came together at a national convening. And I'll say we all sit in these rooms, right? There's a project, everyone comes together, and often there's 1, maybe 2 family leaders in the room. And here we were with over a dozen family leaders from across the country in this room together, where they really were able to give their feedback and input at every conversation, at every table across that room, and also feel supported that I'm not the only one kind of sitting in the corner by myself, right? Here I am feeling included with other people who have similar experiences. And you know what? The whole day is really centered around what is right for families, and the conversation and the process were really set up to facilitate that. The family leaders, like I said, they provided input throughout all of the sessions, which influenced the findings and ultimately the content of the national report. Next slide, please. And so during that time, and again, as I said, the title in and of itself came from one of the family leaders that you see her reflection here, that really spoke to the synergy that was brought to this project to really break down the barriers and allow connections to really be formed and push forward towards the change that we were looking for, and really centering a project on the input of families throughout the entire process. And so, she shared that for the first time, she had really felt like that she wasn't a checkbox. She had sat at many tables on many advisory groups and had often felt like, okay, I had to be here, but my voice doesn't really matter. And instead, in this project, really felt included, especially when we got to the national convening and really being able to be there with other people who shared, similar interests and similar roles to be able to bounce ideas off of and impart those, throughout the room and throughout the convening. We also heard from another family leader that many organizations say that they value families and their opinions. However, The person said, I have never really seen this many parents having a seat at the table in one setting as equal partners. And so that was something that we really wanted to make sure was brought forward throughout the project and really brought to life this framework of family engagement. So with that, we were able to bring two of our family leaders to the table today to talk about their experiences and time on the project and how this project might have been different for them than other opportunities that they've had. So I'm going to allow them to introduce themselves, and then we're going to go into some question and answer, and then we'll open it up for questions from everyone else. So I'll start with Joanna. You want to go ahead and introduce yourself?
Yes, hello. So can everybody hear me? You guys hear me? Okay. So my name is Joanna Ramirez. I identify as Latina, and I'm going to give you a little bit of my story, and I'll tell you why that matters. But I'm a mom of two boys. They're 7 and 12 years old, so pray for me. And those were pretty much my the qualifications that I needed to come on this project, which that in and of itself should speak for itself. Besides the commitment that I made to basically bring my ideas, suggestions, and opinions as feedback from whatever was presented to me. And so I am very thankful for this opportunity, very, very thankful to be here today. I was born in Medellin, Colombia. So Spanish is my first language. And I came to the United States when I was 11. Let's see, what else do I tell you? As a full-time job, I'm a care coordinator for an infant mental health program. And I've worked also in healthcare. And part of the reason why I joined this is because I saw it as an opportunity to not only bring all those pieces, all those lenses that I see, that I see the world through, but also to be able to represent the families that I work for, because they have so many challenges in accessing pediatricians or healthcare. And so I'm also divorced and so a single mom. And again, these are just hats that I wear, lenses that I see the world through, and it helps me to be able to advocate for the communities that I may find myself in and that I represent.
Thank you, Joanna. And Tila Mims, can you introduce yourself?
Hi. Oh, this is so cool. First, I want to say thank you to CSSP and Family Voices for having the wisdom to form a partnership. Family Voices has state affiliates all across the nation. So the core cadre is already present, ready, developed, and that makes any partner's job not only more thorough and complete, but a lot easier, right? And I was lucky enough to join this project through an organization on a local level, the state affiliate, in fact, in Illinois. A contact led me to the project, and I'm ever grateful because this was my first experience. So my experience on this project and others within the Family Voices organization have all been designed and structured in a way that heightens concepts of support and mentorship and development of parents. Alyssa was one of my first mentors, and I remember sitting on the steps in front of my house at the end of a call thinking, this is so cool. I just talked to people from everywhere. And she was as calm and collected as she is now, and reassuring in that this is real, you are valued, and we got you. And for a parent, a mom, a dad of a child with special needs in particular, too often we understand ourselves from the perspective of a liability. This organization helped us see ourselves for the assets that we really have, the value that we bring. And that reflection mirrors the same way that Family Voices can help its partners. Because when they pull out a mom and then show her real value in respect to how she's able to manage a budget, special operations at home, whatever that is, and other things that we do quite instinctively, but really transfer to valuable skill sets. There is someone that has to make that connection. And Family Voices has done a phenomenal job of doing that. So my name is Tila Mims. I have one son. He is a child with special healthcare needs, and he's a rock star, and I drive him hard and he works hard, and we're exhausted at the end of every day, but we do good work. We do good work because of the commitment we make to ourselves. So when I joined this project, first of all, it's like the project flew into Chicago, where I am, which was exciting. And so as they've spoken about, our perspective as a local expert is just the beginning of why this is important. But as a Family Voices leader, a philanthropist, a not-for-profit, an organization looking to partner with Family Voices gets what I consider your own intelligence officer, okay? So I am the man on the street, or man on the ground. It's almost like I'm the subject matter expert from the bottom up. You have subject matter experts from the top down. And if we come together as a team, how much more cohesively and completely are we addressing the concerns and the needs of the project? So I also, particularly with this project, my desires for my own child match what PSP is doing. I have sat in the seat that the parent is sitting in the well baby visit and wondered if I was on track, or if he was on track, or what the track really was. So to have this perspective change where you're focusing on social emotional development and teaching me to communicate with my baby to increase not only social emotional development, but ultimately what becomes the learning gap, that is so critical. And I'm going to be all over that. My life experiences are going to match the same, and my perspective as a parent is going to match that of your target group. And that just makes sense, right? Also, I'm going to add value as a stakeholder. And I think what Family Voices and CSSP have done is honored the fact that they need to work. They believe that working with families initially, consistently, and directly is something that will bring better health to the project, if I could say it that way. I speak about topics of mentorship and preparation. Gotta have that. Merely because I'm a mom first, and there are many things that get sacrificed in exchange for what I'm going to do with and for and through my son. So to have that tug come to me and say, this is the time to prep. This is the time where I'm going to check in with you and make sure that you understand not only the scope of the project, but that you have the confidence that you need to move on. That's really important. Being a parent and of any child, but certainly a parent of a child with special needs, can be especially isolated. So to come to a convening of people from across the nation, that lets me know that what I'm doing at home, independent of any organization or any full-bodied, robust project, is meaningful. So when after this kind of experience, when I go home, I am better for it, and I leave your project better for it too. So lastly, remember, I'm dating myself. There was a commercial back in the 80s that was for the Army, and it wanted you to be all you could be, right? That's what families are going to be able to give to your projects. You'll be able to use keener, more exact intelligence through us. I would, or we as family members and leaders will represent your interests from the ground up, consistently, directly, and initially. And we secure that target group because we represent that target group. This is just going to sure up your outcomes and save you money, which is something that you figure out at the end of the project when you've missed an opportunity like this. So look at this kind of partnership as a cost benefit, and remember that you as an organization, you want to be all you can be. We as family members, we want to be all we can be, but all of our successes are measured in outcomes. So like the Army did, build you a family, an army of families, and build systems that are anchored by a family perspective, by family aspirations, and you'll be able to empower your organizations from within in that way. Thank you.
Thank you. So, and Tila, you had the opportunity to participate on, our site visit. Like you said, we came to Chicago, and you were able to attend and provide, fantastic feedback and interviewing within the session. Joanna, in contrast a little bit, you were able to attend the site visit as well, but you also participated on the Brain Trust. So can you talk about your experience with kind of how this opportunity was different, how the mentorship and prep time really helped to influence your ability to be able to participate in a meaningful way, both as a Brain Trust member and a site visit member?
Yeah, so I have a lot of things to be thankful for during this project. One of the things that I value is inclusivity. You guys were, one of the quotes that we saw before that I really loved is that we were given a seat at the table as equal partners, not just given a seat at the table, because sometimes seen it, like I said, I'm a care coordinator, so I do get paid to go to certain meetings where people are trying to recruit families to participate in their meetings. But unfortunately, they want families to participate or to sit at the table so that they're able to check a box that says, we had a family that is representing the community, not necessarily putting that family on their agenda, not necessarily giving that family a voice. And so it's not a matter of being present, but also being able to participate effectively. And so that's one of the things that I value is that I wasn't just showing up, I was showing up and I was asked questions, and I was, my thinking juices were going because we were working. And so we were also included in every step of the way. We weren't just asked to fill out a survey or ask for feedback, and then, months later we were gonna maybe see an article or something like that. We were there at every step of the way. When there were sites visits, we were at the sites visits. We were given the space to ask questions, to bring, suggestions and think about the challenges that families may have with X or Y model. And so we were really there and really participating. We were always being asked for feedback, even when it had to do with language for a flyer or a presentation or something that we were going to bring back to the group. We were always asked to review it and bring that feedback. And again, that's important because that is where we can ask the questions. Is this available in a different language? I don't understand what this word says, so is another parent going to understand it too? Maybe they will, maybe they won't. And so that's when we were able to ask those questions. For mentorship, I have to say that you guys really created an opportunity where we were able to, again, participate effectively, and where our ideas and our culture, it felt valued. It felt like, this is who you are, this is what you're bringing, and it's not just what you're saying. This is reflective of that community that you're representing. And it created trust, it needed trust from both sides, not just from us as parents, you know, but also from you guys. Like, I was just reflecting about this and thinking, you know, yes, we prepared for this webinar, but I can come on here and say whatever I want to say. This is not pre-recorded. And so you guys have to be able to build that relationship where you are able to trust each other. And that's where the partnership comes in. Because if I have, you know, it's different for me to write some quote of something that someone said, and it's maybe not reflective of their whole discourse, but it's just the part that I liked and the part that I can use for my project. It's different when you have somebody working side by side with you and bringing this together. And I do also want to, part of that mentorship, and thank you guys, because part of that mentorship was Zoom. And we were, like you guys said, we were using Zoom, and I got used to seeing my face on camera much earlier than I needed this for my own job. So thank you. But yeah, using different platforms and meeting people from different places all across the states, and being able to bounce ideas back and forth with each other. But I also want to just briefly touch on stipends, because I think this definitely reinforces the value that that families have. So not only are you creating a seat at the table, but being able to offer compensation for my time is telling me that my time is valuable, that my opinions are valuable, but it's also telling me that as I take a seat at your table, I am leaving probably a seat at my own table at home. And as a single mom, that is very crucial. Like, and Tila was saying this earlier, and everybody has their own values and what matters to them. But for me, one of my priorities is my children. And so I remember a while ago, I was in between jobs, and I was being offered a huge raise for staying at one job that took a lot more time away from my kids. And this person said to me, well, that's okay, because with the amount that I'm going to pay you, you're going to be able to hire a very good babysitter, and they're going to be able to have after school activities. And I said to this person, but I want to see my children grow, and I want to be there, and I want to do homework with them. And so again, everybody has different values and different things that are important to them, and I respect that. But for me, it's very important to be able to be there for my children. And they're not going to be little forever. I can make $10,000 another year, but I'm not going to have the opportunity that I have with them right now. So being able to compensate for that time that I take to be away from my kids, to do something that obviously I have to believe in, because if I didn't believe in this, I would not take that time, right? But you're giving me a seat at a table where I feel I'm making a difference for other parents, and I'm being a voice for the community. And so it's bigger than me, and it's not just a job, or it's not just a presentation, but it's something that is going to help advance an agenda that I believe in.
Thank you, Joanna. Thank you. That was great and reflective of, of your participation throughout, and your commitment to this work, both of you. we have, and this is the thing. So we had a couple of prepared questions. So you all don't know that this question was coming. This is from our audience. So it says, to the family leaders, what training/skill development was the most helpful to make your participation effective? So communication, schedule prompts, confidence building, or was it more the process of inclusion and acknowledgement of how the feedback was used that was most important? Was there a skill or knowledge that would have been helpful in thinking back on the experience? So Tila, you want to start, and then I'll go to Joanna.
Sure. When I think back, I think the most important skill set that I earned was access. Joanna spoke to this, but having practice using the technologies that bring us to the table in whatever modality the industry is using right now is critical, because when we turn away from these platforms, we're using other modalities, applications that are for middle schoolers and teaching us how to calculate assessments for math, or how to make the recipe that I promised my son to make when he earned XYZ. So they're so very different and so very critical, because having access is what makes this a democratic process, and it's what makes it accessible and beneficial to us all. I think that for me was the main thing, readjusting to what was a workspace, and then maybe managing my time. So having a coach to say, this is how I do it, that made a big, big difference for me as well. Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Tila. And Joanna?
For me, it was taking the time to come together with the group, the Brain Trust group, and bounce ideas off each other, and sort of, taking this big project and cutting it almost into smaller pieces, right? And we were meeting once a month, and we were tackling one piece at a time. But we were given some questions to ponder upon before our meeting, and information. And so we had time to digest that information and then come back to this meeting and discuss what we thought, what the challenges we thought were going to be. And again, just being able to have a conversation with other parent leaders before we brought it back to the group.
I think both of you bring up really great points, right? That Tila, you talked about access and the importance of that, and being able to really engage in ways that open doors for you. And Joanna, you really shared the importance of having that network, right? Having that connection to other people. So I think about the fact that we still have a group text from all of the people that worked on the project. Definitely the Brain Trust. And you all are forever connected from the work that you all have done and the bonds you forged, and really thinking through this critical work and really being able, like you said, to trust and bounce things off in a way that then was able to add to the project. And so in thinking about, kind of the culmination of the project where we all came to the convening, I want to hear just each of your final kind of thoughts on the components of the convening that really helped each of you feel like you were partners in the process. And so I'll start with Joanna, and then Tila, you can close.
So at the convening, one of the things that I appreciated was that when we were sitting at a table where we had pediatricians, we had stakeholders, we had parent leaders, we had everybody there. There wasn't the parent table on the side, we were all together, we were all thinking together and discussing all the ideas together. And I think that was one of the most important pieces for me. Also being able to be a part of that panel that presented before the pediatricians. And again, we were able to just express ourselves and know that our voice had a space, that we were given a space at that agenda, that we weren't just there, but we were participating.
Thank you, Joanna. And Tila, kind of one reflection from that day?
We had fun, you know? I mean, because trust had long before been established, because each person understood his or her role and honored the role of the other, it was a very authentic and dynamic situation, because it was really like, old friends meeting again. We'd done this work, and now we come together to see what we produced. And who doesn't like that? And I got to take pictures in DC, and I mean, just as you would go to any other professional conference, there's a bit of excitement and energy about being there, because you're all vested in the same ideals as well as the same ideas. And so to sit in a conference room and come together and see what we'd created, it was just a good time. So in a natural way, it was good for everybody.
Very well said. Thank you both. And so, kind of to where did this lead us, right? In this fantastic work that Tila and Joanna described for us, it led us to some key recommendations that we have, and for how do you do this? How do you move beyond the checkbox? And so for us, we want to really, encourage you to partner with family-led organizations from the start of an initiative, not bringing them in after you kind of already had it developed, but to really bring them in at the beginning to recruit and mentor family leaders, with a focus on family leaders who are representative of the target population to be served. Every state has a family-to-family health information center, as well as many other family-led organizations across your state that you can partner with in order to do this important work. The second recommendation is to provide and create opportunities for family leaders to participate as equal partners. As you heard Tila and Joanna so eloquently state, feeling like they were partners at the table really helped galvanize their input and their participation in the project. And it can help you as well to, have families participate in steering committees or design teams, or develop strategic plans and budgets and things like that. And so the final piece is that we really need to move towards an investment in the infrastructure of family-led organizations. And certainly throughout our report, we talk about the financial investment that's already there for family-led organizations, but much more needs to happen in order for these family-led organizations to continue to be able to offer the type of mentorship and support needed in order to partner in policymaking and other decision-making groups. And so with that, we certainly appreciate you taking your time today to listen to us, and we hope that you too will begin to partner and engage with families. I will say that as this country is on in a point of racial reckoning and really working towards racial justice, without families at the table, you really can't get there. And so that's your pathway to equitable systems and true racial equity within our healthcare industry. So partner with your family-led organizations and engage with them. And we're happy to be here to support you in your efforts. Thank you. Thank you both. I think we're all set. So I think we can log off unless Stephanie wanted to.